Hi all, I'm Jack from Quilting Dreams. Today I'm going to do a quilt tutorial on a free quilt pattern that I found on the Fat Quarter shop. In the description you'll find the link to those patterns in the Fat Quarter shop. If you haven't looked on there before, they're pretty awesome patterns. This one's a free spirit pattern, Tula Pink. I don't have the Tula Pink fabric, it's using a layer cake. So I'm going to use Rainbow Spice by Sarah Thomas of Saraditty. I'm really excited to use this in place of the Tula Pink fabric. Tula Pink's a little bit hard for us to get here in South Australia. We do have stockists of it, but just trying to find exactly what you're after is a little bit tricky. But I have this in my stash, so I'm going to give that a go. I'm also going to use a white Bella Solid as my background, and I'm really excited to give this a go. It's now 3 o'clock in South Australia, and I'm going to see how long it takes me to put this quilt top together. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is look at how you cut up this layer cake. So we're going to cut up one of the squares together, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of them up. So what we'll need is a ruler. I recommend picking your favorite ruler. We don't need a super long one because this is a 10 by 10 inch, and you'll need a rotary cutter to do this piece. So let's just break this one apart. Grab some scissors and we'll just snip that one open, and we'll just snip this one too. I'm excited to use this fabric. I saw it at a quilt fair, I think, and I just loved it. I love how bright this fabric is, and I thought, wow, there were no Tula, I couldn't find the Tula Pink fabric, so I thought I will get this one instead. So we're just going to grab one of those pieces. We need to do this to all 42 of them, and yeah, so we're going to do it to all 42 of the pieces. So what we need first is we need two that are 2.5, that are 2 by 4 1/4. So they've got that along this edge here. Now the way they've got it in the pattern is that they cut on the inside. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use this lovely edge that we've got here, and I'm going to start trimming. So the first thing that I'm going to do is cut a 2-inch strip and pop that down there. Just move that aside for the moment, and we're going to then get, this one is going to be 4 1/4. So we're just going to line that up on our ruler, and 4 1/4, and we'll just need 2 of those, so we'll pop that one to the side, and we'll just get that second one, and we'll just pop that piece of fabric to the side. So that's our first 2 cut. So let's just bring this back in place again. The next one we need is 2 inches by 6.5 inches. So again, let's just cut another 2-inch strip here, lining that up with that lovely edge that we've got, and we'll pop that to the side, and let's pop that around, and we know we need 6.5. The width of my ruler is 6.5. So let's just pop that there. Okay, now we need 4 that are 2 inches by 3.5. So if we just look at what we've got remaining here, we can certainly get one of those out of here, and just lining that one up, taking off that little piece at the end. So that's our one of the 2 by 3.5 inches. So we just need to have a look here. Yes, we've got plenty of fabric here. So the next one we want to do is another 2-inch strip. Perfect. And pop that one aside again, and then we need 3 at one. So we're just going to get 2 3.5-inch ones out of that one and pop that to the side. Now we're just going to go ahead one because we need a 3.5 inch square. So let's do that first to make sure we've got exactly what we want, and we know we do. So the first what I would recommend is just trimming off. There we go. So we've got 4 inches left there. So let's just trim it at the 3.5 mark. Just always checking that twice, because sometimes we think we know what it is, but it's not exactly what we think. So we've got that there. And pop that to the side. So that's our 3.5 inch square. So we've just got the one left to do. So if we trim this down here at 2, and then we want to trim this at 3.5. Whoops, let's pop that to the side. So this is the fabric cut for every single piece, every single layer cake square that you've got. It will be cut up exactly like this, and you'll have a little bit left over that, you know, you can either discard. I'd probably discard those, but possibly you could think of using these for something else. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut all of the fabric, and I'm going to come back to you when I'm done. Okay, so all of the layer cake is cut up, and so that's all ready to go. What you will notice, if you cut it the way that I cut mine, which I showed you at the start, you'll have all of this left over. So there's some really good size pieces left if you cut it this way. You can certainly cut it the way that's in the pattern, and that's no worries at all. And remember, that pattern's from the Fat Quarter shop. It's a free pattern for you to download. So I'm just going to pop those aside for the moment. Now we need to cut fabric number 2. So for the first cut, we need to have it 4 1/4 wide. Now I'm going to cut 2 strips because I'm going to double it up when I trim it down. And it's just, I find that that's, you know, I can cut 4 strips quite comfortably and without movement, and it also gets it through a lot quicker, which is, you know, obviously great. I love cutting, but I find it very therapeutic when I'm sewing, but you also like to get onto the sewing part as well. And then we need 3.5. So I'm going to actually cut 4 of these. And the reason for that is because we've got 2 different sizes that we'll need to cut with this. So I'm just going to go ahead here, trim up 4. There. You know, one thing to think about when you are cutting lots of fabric is to make sure that you're replacing your endurance blades. I use endurance blades, but just making sure you replace those blades frequently, or it does make it a little bit hard. I know this blade is starting to come to its end of its day, so after this quilt I'll definitely go ahead and replace it with a new blade. And you know, it just cuts like butter, so it's beautiful. So we'll just pop that to the side, and if we use just popping the 3.5s to the side, so we've got 4 of those 3.5s, so we'll just pop them to the side. So using the 2 that we've got here, I'm just going to leave them exactly as is. You can straighten those up, that's not a problem. And let's pop that there. Let's just get that big ruler out the way. And we're just going to bring in the smaller one and trim that one down. We'll just take that selvage off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut these at 2 1/4. So, sorry, 2 3/4. Thought that didn't sound right. So we're just going to go ahead and trim that. So you can see we're getting like, when you're doing 4, you get through it very quickly, and in total you need 168 of these pieces. So you'll need approximately 12 strips of fabric to be able to do this. I think you can get 14, 15. Let's have a look from each one. So we'll just see how we go with this. We're almost at the end. So it is a, it's a pretty quick. You can do one strip at a time if you'd like to do it that way, or you can do it any way you like, really, as long as you are comfortable with the way that you're doing it. I find this way is quite good, and it works for me. So I'll go ahead and iron that after, but we can flatten that out using the ruler there, and we'll pop that in. So we're going to get 15 strips per width of fabric. So that's excellent. And we'll just pop that one to the side. We're now just going to grab two of the next, this is 3.5 wide. So we're just going to grab 2 of those. Again, line it up on one of the lines. And let's go ahead and trim down. So what we'll need for this one is 3.5 squares. So let's just go ahead, and in total you need 84 3.5 squares, inch squares that is. So let's just go ahead. So like we're doing 4 at a time here. So per width of fabric, let's see how many we get. So 2, 4, 6, 12 per width of fabric. So take that into consideration when you're cutting yours up. So that's our next one, and you'll need 84 of those. So now let's just grab the last lot here of the 3.5 inch wide. Again, lining that up beautifully. Pop the ruler on. Take off that selvage, and what I do when I know I'm doing equal distances and I don't have to use any math, I look at the width of my ruler and I trim down coming backwards. So these are 2 inches wide, so it means my ruler's 6.5, so I line it up on the 2, 4 and 6, and then we get trimming. So again, 6, then at 4, and then at 2. So there's, whoopsie daisies. See, I think that blade is starting to age and definitely needs to be replaced. Just line that up. And then we've got the 4 here. The 2. And the last one, 2, oops, we definitely need, now if I look at this one here, that's not wide enough, so I will pop that to the side, but we've got our pieces all here, so we can just pop them in a nice pile, and you're going to need 84 of these as well. So I think you get about 20 per width of fabric, which is just brilliant. So you'll just need to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go and cut up all of this background fabric, and then we'll be back to start block number 1. Okay, so it's now 4:30 and we have all of the fabric cut up that we will need for this quilt. So what we're going to do now is move into block 1. Now when I sew up all of my pieces, I'm going to be doing chain piecing. So I'll just have stacks of fabric and I'll just be putting through one at a time. But generally what I do when I'm doing any of these quilts is the very first block I make singular, and then I chain piece everything after that. So we're going to make those singular blocks together, and then after that I'll chain piece as I pull this quilt together. But I think this is going to look stunning. I'm just in love with these colours. Yeah, I think any bright fabric will look absolutely stunning for this particular quilt. So let's get ready for block 1. Okay, so block 1, this is the fabric we'll need for our block 1. So the 168 background pieces, we'll need to have those in 4 equal portions. The 4.5 by 2 inch, both sets of those we'll need, and then the 6.5 by 2 inch will need that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do right sides together with this one here, and we're going to sew down that line, and then we're going to add all the others in, and we're going to go and do that over at the machine now. Okay, so for my sewing today, I'm going to be using my JUKI TL2010Q. The stitch length is on 1.3. I like a very tight stitch length. I'm using the scant 1/4 inch foot. I've been practicing with that for a couple of weeks now, and I'm really enjoying working with it. It just allows me the opportunity to trim down at the end. I find with the 1/4 inch foot that a lot of the times that leaves my quilts, my blocks a little bit short. And although they still piece together really well, I just find that using the scant 1/4 inch just allows me to trim them down and get that really accurate seams. So what we'll do first is, I'm not going to do any pinning, but right sides together, lining them up, making sure we've got that at a lovely right angle, placing that in, and we're just going to sew down that line. Okay, I'm just going to open this up, finger press that to one side. Now when we're doing our finger pressing, make sure we finger press into the coloured direction, not to the white. And then we're going to grab our next piece of fabric, right sides together, lining that up at right angles, and just make sure you have got it at right angles, because otherwise it does tend to get just a little bit wonky, and we don't want a wonky block. And let's pop that one through. And that's one side. We're going to repeat these steps here for the other side, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Pop that one aside and grab that top piece of fabric, and the next one and the middle one, ensuring we've got those right angles beautiful and those everything lined up. You can certainly pop pins in if you like. I just find these are quite small, probably don't really need them, but if you are not confident, then definitely go ahead and do that pinning. And then we've got that, so we want to make sure again we finger press to the right side, like when I say to the right side, to the coloured side there. Grab another piece and pop that one on, making sure it's at a lovely right angle, and we'll pop that one through as well. Okay, and we'll just finger press that one open, just bringing you straight along there. So now you should have two pieces exactly identical. I'm going to go ahead and iron those to one side, and that one side is to the middle, and then we're going to come back. Okay, so we're going to have two strips like this, and what we're going to do now is grab that middle piece. So that middle piece is going to go straight through there. So we're going to go right sides together to one of them, and being that this is just a little bit longer, I tend to like to pin. Now, because I was using the scant 1/4 inch, it may be that these sub blocks are a little bit longer. That's okay. I'm just going to make sure I line it up nice and even, and we're going to sew straight down. Okay, and that is that one in. We're now going to do the same thing, finger pressing open and popping that to the coloured fabric, and then we're going to get our other piece and we're going to line that up with the same as the other side, just getting that nicely lined up. And we'll just bring this over a bit. hold on, what have we got here? There we go. Lining that up and making sure that we have that connecting in there nicely, and we're going to sew that one from then we're going to do that there, and that is what the first block should look like. I'm going to go ahead and iron that, and then we're going to just trim it down, make sure we've got it to the right size. Let's go. Okay, so I've just ironed that up, so you'll notice that I've ironed to the inside on all of them. And that's okay because our sub block is going to be surrounded, as block number 2 is going to be around this. And it just means that our colours are all in, and it's less likely that we're going to get those threads on the white. So when we get to the long arming or quilting it on your domestic machine, that you actually have them nicely centered. You actually have it so that there's no threads showing through on that white. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to make sure that our block is 6.5 wide. So what I do is I use the lines on my ruler to line this up. So I've got the 4 here, which is straight down, and then the 4 across here that's straight across. So I then just go straight up and remove that excess there. We'll turn that around, and we'll do the same thing here, lining those up beautifully. Beautiful. And trimming off that excess. So we don't have a lot of excess, but I do find if I was using the 1/4 inch foot, I probably wouldn't have hardly any excess at all. So now we want to have the next piece, this width is 9.5. So I'm just going to use my other ruler for this one, but I will grab out a different one later. And I'm going to line that up on the 4 there, because we want this at 9.5. So I'm just going to pop that there and trim off that tiny little bit. Turn that around. Again, using that ruler, 9.5. Lining those, so I've got the line here on this side, and I've got the line there, so I know that that's straight. And then we'll just take off the tiny little bit on that side. So now that block is measuring at 9.5 by 6.5. So we want to go ahead now, and we're going to make all 42 of those. And once I've done that, I'm going to come back. Okay, so it's now 7:20, and I have the block 1, 42 of them all complete. So they are all done and ready to go. So I'm going to call it quits for tonight. I think I've made some good progress on this quilt, and I'm going to go and have some dinner, and I'll be back in the morning. Now, I'm an early riser, so I will be back early, and we'll start on block number 2 then. I'm really looking forward to starting block 2. See you in the morning. Hey, so it is Sunday. It is 11:53, and we're going to start on block 2. I was planning to get on a little bit earlier, but unfortunately that hasn't happened. So now we're going to start on block number 2, and let's go through how we're going to do that one, and then I'll go ahead and create the other 41 blocks. Then we will be ready to piece it all together. So pretty exciting day ahead. Let's go. Okay, so we're going to start on block 2. With block 2, this is what it looks like. So I'll be chain piecing the other 41 blocks, and that just moves it through a lot quicker. But the first block I always like to create, work out whether it's perfect, whether I've got it right, and then I go ahead and do the others. So what I'll do first is I will right sides together and sew, and I'll do that for all 3, and then I'll do the other side. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do one now together, and then I'll create the rest. So let's head to the sewing machine. Okay, so we'll grab the first two pieces, and that's these ones here. I shift all of my pieces very close to the sewing table, that way it makes it easier. Then we do right sides together. I make sure that's lined up, and then we pop that one through. We then grab the next one, right sides together, and I'm just going to do it, nope, that's the correct way, and pop that one through. Grabbing this last one and pop that together, just making sure we've got that lovely right angle. You don't want them crooked. They are smaller pieces, so it's much easier to manage, but you also want to make sure you still have your right angles, and then you're not going to end up with a crooked block. Okay, so that's the first side done. So then we just open these up, and we're going to press to the dark side. And then I'll go ahead and iron those up after. So if we press to the dark side, we know that we'll be nesting those seams, so that will be perfect. Then I'm just going to turn it around, and I'm going to grab the top piece and right sides together, getting that right angle, making sure it's matched up, and then we'll go ahead and sew these ones on. Next piece here. And pop this one on. And then if I open these out, remembering we're going to finger press to the dark side, that will definitely help us later when we're long arming to make sure all those darker threads are minimized in being under that white so that we don't see it through that quilting. So I'm going to go ahead and iron these now, and then we'll come back and piece them. Okay, so I've now pressed these seams, and so you can see that they're all facing in the direction of the darker fabric. So at this point you can go ahead and snip these, or you might have already done that already. Some people don't snip them at all, and they'll just line it up the other way. So we'll just turn them over. Okay, so what we want to do is right sides together, and we want to nest those seams. And it's really good to fill that seam all the way down, not just at the top. Just shift the pins over here and pop that pin in, and then the same on the other side. Pop that in. Make sure you can feel it the whole way down, not just a part of the way, because it could go off course. And then we'll pop a pin in the top and a pin. So we just want to make sure this is at a right angle. You don't want that to be crooked, or your block will be crooked. So that's the first one. We'll just quickly pop this second one on, doing exactly the same, nesting the seam, feeling it nicely in there. And the other one, making sure it's a lovely connection, and that way you'll have a beautiful block in the end. And again, lining up that corner, making sure it's at a right angle. And the same on the other side. So let's go ahead and sew these now. Just pop the pins over here. Go ahead and sew these. Flick that around and pop through the other side. And that's the sewing complete for this block. I'm going to go and iron this block open. I'm just going to iron the seams to one side, and then I will come back and square it up. And then that is our block 2 ready to go. and we can then go ahead and create the other 41 blocks. Doesn't that look super sweet? Very cute. I think they call it possibly like an uneven 9 patch or something, but I'm not entirely sure. So let's go ahead and iron that, and then we'll square it up. Okay, so this is our finished block. I'll just turn this over. You'll see that I've ironed the seams to one side, and that's nice, laying nice and flat there. Now, what we want to do is check that we've got this 9.5 by 6.5. So we'll do this side first, using the ruler and lining that up with the lines, our sewing lines. So I generally pick that, pop a little bit of pressure on there, not too much because it doesn't need it. But you just want to make sure it doesn't wobble too much when you're trimming up. And then got that one. Now we need to have this at 9.5. So I'm just going to line up here. I've got my 9.5 here, and I'm using the lines on the ruler again to mark up, and just following those lines. And we're going to trim off what we need to on this side, which is not very much. And then we turn it around, line that up with the 9.5, getting all those lines nice and straight, and then trimming off that bit there. And this is your block, which measures at 6.5 by 9.5. So we have 2 blocks, block number 1 and block number 2. Both measure at exactly the same measurements, so they're both 6.5 by 9.5. I'm going to go ahead now, it's 12:08, and I'm going to piece together the rest of block number 2. Okay, so it's now about 3:20, and I've finished all of block 2. So the next step for us to do is to work out how we're going to place these blocks. So we know what the pattern is. It's block 1, then block 2, and then we alternate that from row to row. In terms of the colour placement, there is a guide on the pattern, and if you are using the layer cake from Tulip Pink, then you can go ahead and create that just in alignment with the pattern. But because I'm using something different, I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to do my colour placement, and as soon as I've done that, I'm going to come back to you and we'll have a look at how we place those colours. Okay, so it's now 3:45 and I've done the colour placement. I'm just going to put a photo up here so that you can see that. And that will show you how I'm planning on placing the colours for my quilt. What we now need to do is piece all the rows together. So what I'll do is I'll collect one row at a time, and I'll piece that together, iron it in one direction, and then I'll do the same with the next row, but iron it in the other direction. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to piece each row, and I'll show you as I progress along. Okay, so I've just picked up the first row. So this is the left-hand side and this is the right-hand side. So I'm going to piece them together one at a time. So I'll do that one and then I'll add each one in to be able to get them all together. So let's sew this row up together so that we both know exactly how we need to piece this quilt. Okay, so we're going to take the first 2. This is from the right hand side, so we're going to work from right to left. We'll place this on top of this one. Make sure we've got those at a nice right angle and all matched up nicely. Now you certainly can put pins in, but I'm not going to, and we're just going to sew straight down. And that's our first one in, and then we just open that up. I'm going to finger press to one side and then add the next one on, and just doing exactly the same thing, just matching that up, turn it round. Now just remember when we turn it round that we don't want to get confused and add it to the wrong end. And that's that one on, and we just keep going ahead and adding them on one by one until we've got our row complete. There's 7 in a row, last one for that row. So that's going, this is on the left hand side. Okay, so that's our entire row done there. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to go and iron it, and then I'll put it back in its place. Unfortunately, I don't have a table big enough for all of these quilts, so I've just got to do it on the floor. So I'll put it back in place on the floor. Once we've got all the rows together, we'll then look at attaching each of those rows. Once we've got these rows done, then we'll look at attaching each row together as well. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so I've now pieced all of the rows together. It is 450, about 450. And what we're going to do next is we're now going to join all the rows. So we've placed all of the blocks in a row, and now we're going to put all the rows together. So I'm going to grab the first two rows, which will be the first two, the two bottom rows, and let's look at how to nest those seams and piece those together. With the rows, I'm going to do the first two, place those back, and then I'm going to pick up the next two, do those and place those back until I've done all 12 rows. So I'll do 6 lots, and then I'll start putting them together. So then I'll make it a group of 4, and then a group, then groups of 8, so that it just reduces the amount of bulk at the sewing machine. You can certainly just keep adding to it, no problems at all. It just starts to get bulkier. I just try to minimize that where possible, and I find this works for me. So let's pick up the first 2 rows, and let's look at nesting those seams and getting all these rows joined together. Okay, so I've picked up the first 2 rows, and I've got it with the side that needs to be pinned closest to me. So just that way I know, and I keep it in like a bit of a systematic order. So what we need to do is grab our pins. We go to our very first one along the way, and we nest that in. As soon as we've got that nested, we pop in a pin. Now I always pin back from the edge, and the reason I do that is so I can sew straight down without having to take out any pins. While we're here, we'll just make sure we've got this at a right angle. So if you can feel at the other end here, at a right angle, and pop a pin in the top there. So we're just going to go along all the way and just keep popping a pin in at each of the connection points, so that where we need to do that nesting. And what you'll find is they'll just start, if you've been sewing accurately and you've trimmed down your blocks, that these will all just start to nest naturally, and you won't have to do a lot of work to get them to nest. And you'll just be able to pop that pin in and move right along to the next one and get them in nicely. So we've just got a couple more to do here. Just grab a few more pins, pop that in, and then just at this end one here, we just want to again just make sure we get that lovely right angle and pop them together, and that pin is in. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to sew down this line. Then we're just going to iron it to one side and place it back, and then we'll grab the next 2, and we'll keep going through that process until we've got all of our pieces all completed. Okay, so it's 6 p.m. on Sunday, and I have finished the Big Charmer quilt. I'm just going to pop a picture up here for you. The quilt top is now finished. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quilt it. I think I might use a geometric type quilt pattern, and then I'll do the binding, and I'll also pop in at the end of this how long that took me to do as well. So yes, I do think this is a quilt we can do in a weekend. I think it's a great quilt. My son is doing Relay for Life. That's a charity event in South Australia that's held every year. I generally donate a quilt to that charity event, so I'm going to donate this one. I think it's bright, it's beautiful, and it's got so much colour that it is just perfect for the Relay for Life I think it goes into some sort of raffle that they do, so I'm always happy to do that and help out every year. So yes, I think we can. This is a great quilt. It's a great beginner quilt. It is the Big Charmer quilt. It's from Free Spirit. The finished size is 63 by 72. You could add a border if you wanted to make it bigger, but I'm going to leave it exactly how it is and go ahead and quilt it. I'm going to link the hyperlink in the description for the pattern, so you can go and get this pattern and have a look at the Fat Quarter shop. It's a great shop. If I lived in America, I would love to use it, but living in South Australia, it's quite expensive in postage. The products are amazing, but the postage is quite, at this time, at the moment, it's still quite expensive. So I love the inspirations the Fat Quarter shop give. I get the Sew Sampler box every month, and that is my special treat for each month from the Fat Quarter shop. So it's 8:30 p.m. at night on Sunday night, and I've just finished quilting. So I quilted this quilt on my gammal. It's 8:30, so not too bad. I've gone ahead and created the binding, so I'm using a pink binding on this one. And let me just show you the quilting. I'll just change the camera and let's have a look at that quilting. Okay, so here's the quilting. I've used a geometric shape on this one here. I thought that would blend quite well. So it's just a series of a whole bunch of squares, and I think that looks really, really pretty. I'm not sure how much you can see. Let's see if we can zoom in and see if you can see what that quilting looks like. But that is the quilting. So what I need to do now is square up the quilt in preparation. So I'll just turn that like that. Square up the quilt in preparation for adding this binding on. And once I've done that, I'll come back and show you the finished product. Hi, so it is 9:10 on Sunday evening and the quilt is finished. I'll pop a picture up here. I love it. I just love it. I love the fact that it's a quick and easy quilt. I've got so many works in progress, and sometimes it's just lovely just to bang out a quilt in a weekend and thoroughly enjoy it. I love chain piecing. I just loved the colour in this quilt. It just came together so quickly and so beautifully. So you could definitely do this quilt top in a weekend, or like myself, you can go from start to finish, from cutting right through to quilting and binding. A couple of things to note: depending on your machine speed, that could have an influence on how quickly you can produce your quilt, and also depending on how you choose to cut your fabric at the start. If you cut your fabric one piece at a time, that will take longer than what I took. I tend to do 4 layers at a time. And I find that that's much more effective for me. But just remember to have a nice sharp blade when you do that. And when you're doing your sewing, a new needle is always a good option. It just makes it look so much better. So until next time, have an absolutely wonderful day. Keep crafting, and bye for now.